Chapter 1 Intro. Hello and welcome to Sleep Through History. The word pirate usually brings a very specific image to mind, doesn't it? A daring hero with a parrot on his shoulder, a treasure map in his pocket, and a sword in his hand. We imagine a life of thrilling adventure, complete freedom, and a chest full of gold coins buried on a deserted island. But the reality of a pirate's life during their famous Golden Age in the early 1700s was usually not romantic at all. It was a life chosen out of desperation, a way to escape the brutal, almost slave-like conditions on merchant ships or in the king's navy. It was a world of extreme boredom, sickness, and backbreaking work, interrupted only by moments of intense danger. So tonight, we will leave the legends behind and see what it was really like. We'll step aboard one of those crowded wooden ships and explore the surprising democratic rules they lived by. We'll learn about the simple food they ate, the fears they faced, and why so many ordinary men chose a short, risky life under the black flag instead of a long, miserable one serving a king. But before we dive in, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It's a wonderful way to support the channel, and it means a great deal to me. I'm also always curious to know where in the world, and at what time, you're joining me tonight. I would love to hear from you in the comments. And now, settle in. Let the noise of the modern world fade away. Let us travel back to a time of taut rope, black powder, and the open sea. Our story doesn't begin with a pirate. It begins with an ordinary person. Let's imagine that you are that person. Chapter 2 The Unlikely Recruit. You are not a hero, and you are not a villain. You are simply a sailor in your early 20s, and your entire world is this small, damp wooden ship, creaking its way across the vast and empty Atlantic. It is 2 hours before dawn, and you are already exhausted. You were woken an hour ago, not by a gentle shake, but by the sharp bark of the boatswain, the senior sailor in charge of the deck crew. Your hands are raw, blistered, healed, and blistered again from hauling on the salt-stiffened ropes that control the massive sails above. The air is cold and heavy with salt spray that never seems to dry, chilling you to the bone. Every muscle in your back and shoulders aches from the relentless work of yesterday, the day before, and every day for the past 6 months since you left port in Bristol. This is your life on a merchant vessel in the year 1716. It is not a life of adventure. It is a life of unending, backbreaking labor. You and the few dozen other men on board are a tiny human island in an endless ocean, and the work never stops. You are constantly adjusting the rigging, climbing high into the masts on swaying ropes to furl or unfurl sails with nothing but 100 feet of empty air and churning sea below you. You work the pumps to expel the foul, stagnant bilge water that constantly seeps into the hull. You scrub the decks, mend the sails, and tar the ropes. You do this day in and day out, in blistering sun and freezing rain. For this ceaseless labor, you are paid a pittance, and even that is not guaranteed. As a sailor on a merchant ship, you aren't paid until the voyage is completely over. If the ship sinks, you get nothing. If you die of disease or accident halfway through, your family back home gets nothing. And if you make it back to port, the captain, a man with absolute authority, can easily cheat you. A captain can invent fines for supposed infractions, a misplaced tool, or a moment of perceived laziness, and deduct them from your hard-earned wages. You have seen it happen on every voyage. Men who worked for a year straight, only to end up with a few shillings in their pocket, just enough to get drunk for a night before signing on to another ship to do it all over again. The food is even worse than the pay. Your daily ration is a biscuit called hardtack, little more than flour, water, and salt baked into a cracker as hard as wood. It has to be soaked in water or beer just to be chewed, and it is almost always infested with weevils, small, black beetles that live in the flour barrels. The meat is salted beef or pork stored for months, so saturated with salt that it must be scraped and soaked for hours before it can be choked down. The water is the worst of all, stored in wooden casks where it quickly becomes stagnant, green, and slimy. This diet of salt and starch, with no fresh fruit or vegetables, leads inevitably to scurvy. You have seen men suffer from it. You have seen their gums bleed, their teeth fall out, their old wounds reopen, and their minds grow confused, all from a lack of simple nourishment. And looming over all this hardship is the constant threat of discipline. The captain of a merchant ship is a king in his floating kingdom. His word is law, and his primary tool of enforcement is the whip. The cat o' nine tails, a whip with multiple knotted lashes, can turn a man's back into a ruin of bleeding flesh for the smallest offense. Arguing with an officer, being too slow to climb the rigging, or even just being disliked by the captain is enough to warrant a flogging. There is no trial, no appeal. Just a sharp whistle of the lash and the brutal, searing pain. You know you are lucky, in a way, you chose this life. Many sailors in the King's Royal Navy did not. They were pressed into service, kidnapped from the streets of a port town or taken from another ship at sea and forced to serve. In the Navy, the discipline is even harsher, the work just as hard, and you have the constant, added terror of being killed in a naval battle. Your world exploding in a shower of cannonballs and wooden splinters. So, this is your world, a cycle of constant work, terrible food, stolen wages, and arbitrary, brutal punishment. Your future holds nothing more than these miserable voyages until the sea or sickness finally claims you. To you, piracy is not a romantic notion. It is a whisper, a rumor, a story told by other sailors in hushed tones. It is a dangerous path, yes, but it is a different one. One gray morning, as you are squinting at the horizon, you see it. A strange sail, a fast-moving ship closing on your vessel with unnerving speed. It flies no colors you recognize. As it draws closer, the men around you begin to murmur, their faces pale with fear. They know what this might be. But for you, buried beneath the fear, a different feeling begins to stir, a small, dangerous spark of something else entirely. Chapter 3. Joining the Brotherhood. The ship grows larger, slicing through the waves with a purpose your own vessel lacks. It's a sloop, smaller, faster, and far more nimble than your bulky merchantman. You notice it's crowded with men, far more than would be needed for a simple trading voyage. The captain of your ship is shouting orders, his voice tight with fear. The men around you move with a panicked energy. Then, the moment of truth arrives. A puff of white smoke blossoms from the side of the approaching sloop. A second later, you hear the deep boom of a cannon, and a cannonball skips across the water just in front of your ship's bow. This is a warning shot, a clear, universal signal on the high seas that means, stop your vessel, or the next shot will not be a warning. Your captain is no fool. He knows his ship is slower, his crew is smaller, and his few small cannons are no match for the firepower of a dedicated pirate vessel. To fight would be suicide. His cargo is insured by wealthy men in London. His life is not. He gives the order to strike the colors, to lower the flag in a sign of surrender. The tension on deck shifts from panic to a kind of grim, fearful resignation. The pirate sloop skillfully maneuvers alongside, and with the crash of grappling hooks and rope, the two ships are bound together. And then, they are aboard. They spill over the railing, not as a disorganized mob, but as a confident, organized team. You see now that they are sailors just like you. Their faces are weathered by the same sun and sea. Their hands bear the same calluses from the ropes. But there is a difference. They move with an air of freedom and confidence you have never seen on a merchant ship. They are well armed, each man carrying a pistol tucked into his belt and a sword at his side. They quickly disarm your ship's officers and gather your crew on the main deck. You stand there, heart pounding, expecting the worst. but there is no immediate violence. Instead, a man steps forward who is clearly in charge, though he isn't the captain. This is the quartermaster. On a pirate ship, he is the second in command, the man who represents the crew's interests, handles discipline, and is responsible for dividing any plunder. He is often more powerful than the captain in day-to-day life. His voice is calm and direct. He tells your crew that they have no interest in harming any ordinary sailor. They are here for the cargo and for anyone who wishes to join their company. He lays out the offer. You can stay with your captain, continue your voyage, and face the same life of misery and poverty you have always known. Or you can leave it all behind. You can join them. You can become a free man, entitled to an equal share of every prize they take. You look at the faces of your crewmates. For most, fear wins out. They have families, homes, and a deep, abiding fear of the hangman's noose. But you see a few others, men like you, with little to lose and no future to look forward to. And you see the same spark in their eyes that you feel in your own chest. The choice, you realize, is truly yours. The pirates don't want to force you. They have escaped tyranny themselves. They have no interest in commanding a crew of unwilling captives. They want volunteers, brothers who will willingly fight alongside them. You weigh your life in that moment. On one side, a guaranteed future of backbreaking work, spoiled food, and the sting of the whip, all for wages you might never see. On the other, the promise of plunder, freedom, and respect. It is a choice between a long, slow misery and a life that will likely be short, but at least it will be your own. You and two other sailors step forward. The quartermaster grins and gestures for you to cross over to the pirate ship. As you climb over the railing, leaving your old vessel and your old life behind, one of the pirates hands you a tin mug filled with a cloudy, alcoholic liquid. It is grog, a simple drink of rum watered down, sometimes mixed with lime or sugar. It is the lifeblood of sailors everywhere. But this mug tastes different. It tastes of freedom. Your old ship, now poorer by a few crewmen and a hold full of cargo, detaches and slowly sails away. You stand on the deck of a pirate vessel, surrounded by the so-called enemies of all mankind. You are now one of them. The initial relief begins to fade, replaced by a new, pressing reality. You have joined their society, but you do not yet know its laws. You stand on the deck of your new ship, the taste of grog still on your lips. The initial wave of change has just begun. After reading the articles, the quartermaster lays the parchment on a barrel. To join the brotherhood, you must sign. You take the quill, dip it in ink, and make your mark. By doing this, you enter a sacred contract. You have formally sworn your allegiance. You are now a full member of a society of outlaws, governed by its own surprisingly fair and orderly laws. Chapter 4. Signing the Articles. The adrenaline and relief have passed, replaced by a quiet, lingering uncertainty. You have escaped the tyranny of your old captain, but what exactly have you joined? How can a ship full of men who have rejected all authority function without tearing itself apart? The answer comes a short while later. The quartermaster, the man who invited you aboard, gathers you and the other new recruits. He unrolls a sheet of parchment, its edges worn from use. This, he explains, is the foundation of their society, the ship's Articles of Agreement, more famously known as the Pirate Code. You learn immediately that this is not a set of rules imposed from above. On this ship, there is no absolute king. Before any voyage, the entire crew gathers to debate, argue, and vote on every single rule written on this page. Every man, from the captain down to you, has an equal say. The captain is elected and can be removed by a majority vote if the crew is not satisfied with his leadership. You have joined a floating democratic republic, a concept so radical that it takes a moment to fully grasp. The quartermaster reads the key articles aloud. First, every man has an equal vote in the affairs of the moment. Any major decision, whether to attack a ship, where to sail, or what punishments to hand out, is decided by the crew as a whole. Second, no prey, no pay. You receive no fixed wages. Instead, your payment is a fair share of the plunder. The articles specify exactly how the loot is divided. The captain might receive 2 full shares, the quartermaster 1.5, and skilled men like the surgeon or carpenter a slightly larger portion. But you, as a regular sailor, are entitled to 1 full share. No deductions, no tricks. You get exactly what you are owed. Third, there are strict rules of conduct. Any quarrel must be settled on shore with pistols or swords to prevent disruptive fighting on the crowded ship. No women are allowed on board, a rule designed to prevent jealousy. Every man is expected to keep his weapons clean and ready for action at all times. Fourth, lights out at 8 o'clock. This is a critical fire safety rule. No open flames, candles, or lamps for gambling or drinking after dark. On a wooden ship filled with gunpowder and tar-stiffened ropes, a single careless flame could doom everyone. And then comes the most surprising article of all, a system of insurance for injuries sustained in battle. A man who loses his right arm might be awarded 600 pieces of 8. The loss of a leg is worth 500, an eye 100. This is paid out from the ship's treasury before the rest of the plunder is divided. It is a promise that your brothers will take care of you. A level of respect unimaginable on the merchant ship you just left. Chapter 5. You're floating home. With the formalities over, you take your first proper look around, seeing the ship not as a captive anymore, but as a resident. This is your home now, a lean, fast sloop transformed from a workhorse into a predator of the sea lanes. Your new crew has already made modifications. You see more cannons on deck than a merchant ship would ever carry, their black iron muzzles staring out from newly cut gun ports. The decks have been cleared of clutter to make room for fighting, and this vessel has been truly hardened. You walk the main deck, taking in the controlled chaos. Thick coils of rope neatly tied down, pyramids of cannonballs secured with netting, and spare spars lashed to the sides, ready to replace any that might be broken in a storm. You close your eyes to simply listen. The groan of the timbers, like an old man's sigh. The rhythmic lapping of the waves against the hull. The sharp snap of canvas sails in the wind. It is a symphony of wood, wind, and water. But the real heart of the ship, you soon discover, is below deck. As you climb down into the gloom, a thick, warm, and heavy air envelopes you. This is the 'tween deck, your main living quarters. There are no private cabins here. This single, low-ceilinged space is where you and 80 other men will sleep. You see rows of hammocks, slung close together from overhead beams. They are hung so tight that you can easily reach out and touch the man next to you. Unlike a fixed bunk, a hammock sways with the motion of the ship, cradling you and preventing you from being thrown to the floor during rough seas. The air here is a complex mixture of unwashed bodies, stale rum, and damp wool, all underscored by a foul, sour scent coming from below, the bilge. The very bottom of the hull is a dark, inaccessible space where leaked seawater, spilled food, and waste gather into a putrid, sloshing soup. It is the defining smell of your new home. You realize that on this vessel, there is no such thing as privacy. You will eat, work, and sleep within arm's reach of nearly 100 other men. You now understand why the ship's articles had such strict rules against fighting. In such a crowded space, small disagreements could easily boil over into dangerous violence. You find an empty space between 2 cannons and are shown how to sling your own hammock. As you lie back in the gently swaying canvas, you are surrounded by this new family. You know the rules, you know the layout, but now a new question looms. What do you actually do all day? Chapter 6. The Daily Grind at Sea. You wake to the gentle rocking of your hammock. It's dark, but you hear the sounds of men stirring around you. Your first full day as a pirate has begun. You quickly learn that a pirate's life is not one of lazy leisure. A pirate ship is a complex machine that demands constant attention. Your entire existence is governed by the watch system. The crew is divided into two halves. Your half is on duty for a 4-hour shift, then off for the next 4. It is a relentless cycle that repeats all day and all night. There is no weekend, no day off. There is only the watch. During your shift, the work is familiar yet different. You are constantly trimming the sails, pulling on ropes to catch the wind. A delicate, constant conversation between the crew, the sails, and the sea. But most of the work is maintenance. Endless, repetitive, vital maintenance. You spend hours sitting on the deck with a mallet and chisel performing caulking, hammering tarred rope fibers into the seams between the wooden planks to keep the ship from taking on water. On other days, you are sent aloft with a bucket of tar to coat the rigging, protecting the lines from the sun and salt spray. You scrub the decks to scour away the slippery green algae that grows in the damp sea air. You check the cannons, ensuring they are secure and the gunpowder stores are kept bone dry. Sometimes, you are assigned lookout duty. You climb the rigging to the crow's nest, a small wooden platform at the top of the mainmast. From here, the view is immense, a 360-degree panorama of nothing but the endless, shifting blue. Your job is to stare into that emptiness for hours, searching for the one thing that matters, another sail. It is a lonely, hypnotizing task. When your watch ends, your off time isn't truly for leisure. This is when you eat your rations, mend your clothes, sharpen your knife, or wash your laundry in a bucket of seawater. And yet, everything feels different here. There is no bosun screaming insults at you. There is no officer threatening you with a whip for a minor mistake. The men work together with a quiet efficiency. They know the ship is theirs. You are not working out of fear. You are working for a shared purpose. You are a shareholder in this enterprise, and your work directly contributes to your own potential fortune. The days begin to bleed into one another, marked only by the sun. You realize that the great enemy on these long voyages is not the Royal Navy, nor is it the storm. It is the vast, soul-crushing boredom of the open sea. As you fall into this routine, you notice how the society functions. The captain is respected, but in the day-to-day life of the ship, it is the quartermaster that the men truly listen to. Chapter 7. The Captain and the Quartermaster. As the weeks pass, you begin to truly understand how a ship full of outlaws governs itself. It is not one man who leads, but two, in a delicate, ingenious balance of power specifically designed to prevent the tyranny you escaped. First, there is the captain. He is treated with respect because he is the expert navigator, the man who can read the waves and the stars. His primary job is to guide the ship and command it in battle. He is, in essence, the ship's war chief. When a potential prize is spotted, the casual atmosphere instantly sharpens. In that moment, the captain's authority becomes absolute. He decides the angle of attack, when to fire, and when to board. During combat, the crew puts their trust in his skill to keep them alive and win the prize. But here is the crucial difference. As soon as the battle ends, his absolute power vanishes. He steps back and once again becomes a man among equals. He cannot order a man flogged for a minor insult, nor can he change the ship's destination on a whim. If he proves to be a coward, the crew can vote at any time to depose him and elect a new leader. The true power in the day-to-day life of the ship belongs to the quartermaster, the peace chief. While the captain leads in war, the quartermaster is the crew's advocate, elected to protect their interests and ensure fairness. His responsibilities are vast. He is in charge of the ship's stores, distributing food and water to ensure every man gets his equal share. He is the ship's judge and jury. If you have a dispute with another sailor, you do not take it to the captain, you take it to the quartermaster. He listens, he rules, and his decision is final. He also administers the punishments the crew has voted on. If a man is to be flogged, it is the quartermaster who gives the order, removing the power of personal vengeance from the captain's hands. When a prize is taken, the quartermaster leads the boarding party. He decides what plunder is taken, and he is the keeper of all that loot until it can be divided. He ensures that every coin, every bolt of cloth, and every barrel of wine is accounted for and shared out exactly as the articles prescribe. You now see the genius of this system. It is a separation of powers born from the bitter experience of men who had been oppressed. They gave one man the power to lead them in war, but gave another man the power to protect them from that same leader in times of peace. It is a government for the people, by the people, on a floating wooden republic of outlaws. The system works because it is built on fairness. But as you receive your daily portion of salted beef and hardtack, a new thought comes to mind. Just how much is that share? That night, your ship becomes a floating banquet hall. The cook, usually just another sailor with a bit of skill, becomes the most important man on board. The smell of roasting meat fills the air. You eat freshly baked bread, drink stolen wine from tin mugs, and sing shanties with your brothers. For a few hours, you live better than any king. This is the reward, the merry life you signed up for. You are full for the first time in years, and the threat of scurvy is pushed away by fresh food. But this bounty cannot protect you from everything. A slip of a knife while working the rigging, a fall, or a sudden, raging fever are constant dangers. Chapter 8. A Pirate's Rations. The question of what you eat and drink is one of the most fundamental parts of your new life. You quickly learn that the standard rations on a pirate ship are, at first, disappointingly similar to the grim menu of the merchant vessel you so gladly left behind. The foundation of your diet is still hardtack, the rock-hard flour and water biscuit, likely dotted with the black specks of weevils. The main source of protein is still salted meat, either beef or pork, cured in barrels of brine for so long that it is tough, chewy, and overwhelmingly salty. This is supplemented by sacks of dried peas, beans, or oatmeal. It is a diet of survival designed to last for months in a damp hold, not for pleasure. Your drink is much the same. Water stored in casks quickly goes foul, so alcohol is essential. The daily ration of grog, a mix of rum and water, is a treasured ritual, a moment of warmth and cheer that makes the stale water more palatable and provides a brief escape from the monotony of life at sea. But here is where you discover the pirate's advantage. Unlike a merchant ship, which must sail on a strict schedule, a pirate vessel is the master of its own time. Your captain is not in a hurry to deliver cargo, which gives you the freedom to supplement your diet in ways a merchant sailor could only dream of. If supplies run low, you might stop at a small, uninhabited island. The crew will go ashore, armed not for battle, but for hunting. You spend the day tracking wild pigs or goats through the jungle, a welcome relief from the ship's confinement. The animals are brought back, and the crew builds a fire on the beach, roasting the fresh meat over a wooden grill called a buccaneer. The taste of fresh, unsalted meat is a luxury so profound it feels like a feast for a king. At sea you fish. Men trail lines from the stern, hoping to catch tuna or other large fish to share. But the most prized catch is the giant sea turtle. They were plentiful in the Caribbean, easy to catch while they slept on the surface, and a single large turtle could feed the entire crew. Remarkably, they could be kept alive on their backs on deck for weeks. This is the pirate way, living off the land and sea. But the greatest feast, the moments of true indulgence, come after a successful capture. When you board a merchant ship, the first prize is often the pantry. Your crew descends upon his private stores with joyous cries. You might find barrels of fine French wine or Spanish brandy, sacks of soft white flour for baking bread, and precious casks of sugar or exotic spices. Best of all, You might find live chickens clucking in coops or a cow brought along for the captain's table. You would be given a large dose of rum or laudanum to numb the pain and a leather strap to bite down on to keep from biting through your own tongue. Your crewmates would hold you down, and the carpenter surgeon would work as quickly as he could. The survival rate for such procedures was low, but it was better than the certain death of infection. Common sicknesses like fevers and dysentery could sweep through the crowded, unsanitary ship with terrifying speed. And scurvy was a constant threat on long voyages. While pirates were generally better fed, they were not immune. But here, once again, the pirate code offered a unique form of protection. As you learned when you signed the articles, there was a system of compensation. Your crewmates would care for you as best they could. But if you lost an arm, a leg, or an eye in service to the ship, you were financially compensated for your loss. You were a brother, and you would not be abandoned. This rudimentary system of medicine and insurance was a lifeline. But the best way to avoid the surgeon's knife was to avoid trouble in the first place, which meant moving efficiently, finding prizes quickly, and knowing the route to a safe port. To do that, your ship needed more than just strong backs and sharp swords. It needed a keen mind and an understanding of the heavens. Chapter 9. The Ship's Surgeon. The question of what happens when you are seriously hurt or fall ill is a heavy one. In the world you left behind, a sick sailor was often seen as a useless burden. Here, among pirates, you learn that the approach is different, born from a mix of brutal necessity and surprising compassion. Most pirate ships did not have a professionally trained doctor. A surgeon was a highly valued prize. If one was captured on a merchant or naval vessel, he was considered one of the attack's most valuable assets. The pirate crew would do everything they could to persuade him to join them, offering a full share of the plunder and promising good treatment. A skilled surgeon was one of the very few men a pirate crew might actually force into service, as his knowledge was a matter of life and death for everyone. But if no doctor could be found, the role of ship's surgeon fell to whichever crewman had the most relevant skills. In many cases, this was the ship's carpenter. This might seem strange, but the logic was grimly practical. The most common major surgery at sea was amputation, and no one on board was better with a saw. The carpenter knew his tools. He knew how to make a clean, swift cut, and was not squeamish about it. On other ships, the role might fall to the cook, as he was the man most skilled with knives. The ship's medical kit was usually a captured surgeon's chest, itself a form of treasure. Inside, you would find the tools of the trade: saws for bone, sharp knives for flesh, probes for exploring wounds, and forceps for pulling out musket balls. The medicines were a mix of the effective and the dangerous. The chest would contain laudanum, a powerful opiate painkiller; mercury, a common but toxic treatment for venereal diseases; and various dried herbs for fevers and infections. After a battle, the main deck could be transformed into a makeshift operating theater. Wounded men would be laid out, and the surgeon would get to work. His methods were direct and brutal. A deep sword cut would be stitched shut with a simple needle and thread. To stop bleeding and prevent infection in a world without antibiotics, the surgeon would perform a cauterization, sealing the wound by applying a red-hot piece of iron or a dollop of hot tar directly to the flesh. The smell of burning skin and the screams of the patient were a common aftermath to any fight. For a limb shattered by a cannonball or a musket shot, there was usually only one option: amputation. To remove the ruined arm or leg was the only way to prevent gangrene, a deadly infection that was always fatal. Chapter 10. Navigating the Unknown. You now understand how the ship is governed, maintained, and cared for. But all of this would be for nothing if the ship could not find its way. In the seemingly endless expanse of the ocean, with no roads and no landmarks, the art of navigation is perhaps the most vital skill on board. Getting it wrong means more than just missing a prize. It means starvation, thirst, and being lost at sea forever. The responsibility for this crucial task falls to the captain. His tools are a mixture of the simple and the ingenious. His most prized possessions are his nautical charts, precious, hand-drawn documents on parchment, often stolen from captured ships. They show coastlines, islands, and warnings about reefs. They are frequently inaccurate, but they are the best guide you have. To know your direction, you have the magnetic compass. But direction is only half the problem. You must also know your speed. For this, the navigator uses a clever device called a chip log. It consists of a small weighted piece of wood tied to a long rope with knots at regular intervals. The chip is thrown from the stern, and as the ship moves forward, the rope unspools. Using a sandglass to measure precise time, the navigator counts how many knots pass through his fingers. This tells him the ship's speed in knots, a unit still used today. Using instruments like a quadrant or an astrolabe, he measures the angle of the sun at noon or the height of the North Star at night to determine your latitude. But there is one great, unsolved mystery of your time: longitude, your position east or west. There is no simple trick to calculate it. To overcome this, sailors rely on dead reckoning. It is an art more than a science. You start from a known position, measure your speed and direction, and estimate your progress. But a strong current or a small error can quickly throw you miles off course. A truly great navigator reads the natural world. The color of the water, the flight patterns of seabirds, and the shape of the clouds all whisper secrets about distant land or weather. You watch the navigator work, realizing that his art is the only thing standing between you and the void. As you scan the horizon, you are no longer just looking for a path. You are looking for a target. Suddenly, a cry from the crow's nest electrifies the ship. Sail ho! The captain confirms it with his spyglass, a heavily loaded merchant vessel, sitting low in the water. It is the prize you have been waiting for. Chapter 11. Hoisting the colors. Your ship, being faster and more agile, begins the chase. As you close the distance, you see your ship is flying the English flag, the Union Jack. This is the first step in the hunt: deception. A pirate ship might fly the colors of any nation to appear as a friendly vessel, closing off the target's avenue of escape. Then, the pretense ends. You are within cannon range. On your captain's command, the false flag is lowered. For a moment, the mast is bare. The men on the merchant ship are surely watching, stomachs tightening with dread. Then, a new flag is bundled, attached to the rope, and hoisted. It is the Jolly Roger. This flag is the most powerful weapon in the pirate arsenal, a tool of psychological warfare. You learn that Jolly Roger doesn't refer to just one design, but to any flag used to declare pirate identity. The most common is a stark black one, the color of death, the direct opposite of a white flag of surrender. By flying it, your ship makes a promise of violence. We are not bound by the laws of any nation. We live by our own rules. Even more terrifying is the red flag, a signal of pure rage, meaning no mercy and no prisoners. Then there are the symbols, the skull and crossbones, or variations like a skeleton toasting the devil, a bleeding heart, or calico jacks crossed swords. The entire purpose is to make a real fight unnecessary. Piracy is a business. A bloody battle means damaged ships and a dead crew. The flag is an advertisement. We are what you fear most. Surrender your cargo, and you may live. Resist, and we will send you all to the bottom of the sea. You watch as the black flag rises and unfurls in the wind. Across the water, you can almost feel the wave of terror washing over the merchant deck. They have a terrible choice: surrender and hope for mercy, or fight and face the violence that your flag has promised. Chapter 12. The Anatomy of an Attack. The merchant captain chooses to fight. A small cannon fires in defiance, but the shot falls harmlessly into the sea. Your captain gives the order to engage. Now, the ship becomes a finely tuned weapon. The helmsman maneuvers into a precise tactic known as crossing the T, positioning your ship so your broadside faces the enemy's stern, allowing you to unleash every cannon you have while they can fire almost nothing back. On deck, the scene is controlled chaos. Gun crews work with practiced speed. For the first volley, they load chain shot, two balls linked by a chain to tear through the enemy's rigging and sails, or grape shot, a bag of metal balls that turns the cannon into a massive shotgun to clear the enemy's deck. Your captain waits for the perfect swell, then shouts, "Fire!" The world explodes. The roar of a dozen cannons is a physical force that vibrates through your bones. A thick, acrid cloud of black gunpowder smoke blankets the ship, smelling of sulfur. As the smoke clears, the merchant ship is crippled, masts cracked, sails in tatters. Now, you move in for the final phase. Grappling hooks are hurled across the gap, biting deep into the enemy's railing. With a sickening crunch of timber, the two ships are bound together. High above, sharpshooters in the rigging pick off the enemy officers. Then, the quartermaster gives the order, "Boarders away." You swarm over the railings with a pistol in one hand and a sword in the other. The fighting is a confusing, desperate flurry, but it is brief. The merchant crew is demoralized and has little motivation to die for their captain's cargo. They quickly throw down their weapons. The silence that follows is broken only by the groans of the wounded and the crackle of small fires. The adrenaline begins to fade, replaced by the smell of sweat and fear. The prize is yours. Chapter 13. No prey, no pay. The smoke of battle clears, and a focused, surprisingly disciplined process begins. This is not the chaotic free-for-all looting you might have imagined from tavern tales. The quartermaster now assumes absolute command of the prize, and the first rule of piracy is strictly enforced. All plunder belongs to the company as a whole. You learn very quickly that any pirate caught hiding even a single coin, a gold tooth, or a small piece of jewelry for himself before the general division takes place faces the harshest of punishments, often marooning or a severe flogging. To be caught stealing from your crewmates is the ultimate betrayal, as the entire system of trust and fairness that holds the pirate brotherhood together relies on every man being honest at this crucial stage. The quartermaster and a small, trusted team of officers begin a meticulous, hour-long inventory of the captured vessel. You now realize what the word plunder truly means. It is rarely a cinematic chest overflowing with gold coins. The real treasure is the cargo. The hold of the merchant ship might be filled with massive barrels of sugar or tobacco from the Americas, precious barrels of indigo dye from India, or fine silk textiles from the East. These goods are the true bulk of the wealth, worth a fortune to the right buyer in a black market port. But the plunder does not end there. The ship itself is a source of immense value. Its heavy cannons, gunpowder kegs, and piles of cannonballs are vital for your own vessel's strength. Its spare sails, coils of fresh, strong rope, heavy anchors, and fine carpentry tools are all precious naval stores that are nearly impossible to acquire on the open sea. Even the personal belongings of the captured crew and wealthy passengers are collected. Their wigs, silver buckles, silk coats, and any coins found in their pockets are all tossed onto the communal pile. Nothing is overlooked. Once the inventory is finished and all valuable goods have been transferred to your ship, you and your crewmates set sail for a pirate-friendly port. This might be a bustling, lawless haven like Nassau in the Bahamas, or a quiet, hidden cove where shady merchants are always waiting to trade. Here, the quartermaster and captain negotiate the sale of the cargo, turning barrels of sugar and bolts of cloth into cold, hard currency. When the goods are sold, the most important ritual of pirate life begins. The entire crew is assembled on deck. The quartermaster stands before you, holding the total sum of the profits. The first order of business is to pay the ship's debts to its own crew. The compensation fund is opened, and the promise written in the articles is honored first. The man who lost an eye in the last fight is called forward and given his 100 pieces of 8. The man whose arm was mangled by a musket ball is given his payment. It is the bedrock of your society, a promise that your brothers will look after you. Once the wounded are cared for, the remaining wealth is divided. You step forward, and the quartermaster counts out your full share into a heavy cloth bag. You feel the weight of the silver in your hand. It is more money than you could have earned in 10 years of backbreaking labor on a merchant ship. This is the moment that makes it all worthwhile. This bag of coins is not just wealth. It is independence, respect, and your hard-earned reward. You are, for the first time in your life, a wealthy man. This is the pirate mentality. You realize their life is a constant gamble, and so is their money. They live with the ever-present threat of a sudden, violent death, so the idea of saving for a future they will likely never see seems pointless. The philosophy is to live for this exact moment with as much intensity as possible. A short life, but a merry one. You spend your silver on things you could only dream of at sea. You eat freshly roasted pork until you are full. You buy a new shirt made of soft, clean linen to replace your ragged, salt-stiffened rags. You visit a merchant who caters to the pirate trade and buy a fine new pistol and a bag of lead shot, investing in the tools that will help you earn your next fortune. For a full week, life is a beautiful blur of drinking, eating, gambling, and spending. The disciplined order of the ship dissolves into a wild riot of individual freedom. But it cannot last. Sooner or later, you reach into your pocket and find it empty. Your entire share, a sum that would have sustained a family for a year, is gone, traded for a few fine meals, a new weapon, and a pounding headache. Just as the last of the crew runs out of money, the call goes out from the quartermaster. The ship has been repaired and restocked. It is time to go back to sea. For the first time in your life, a wealthy man. Chapter 14. Shore Leave in a Pirate Haven. The call goes out for shore leave, and the excitement is palpable. You and the rest of the crew pile into longboats and row towards the sandy beach. The feeling of setting foot on solid ground after months of the sea's relentless motion is a strange, disorienting, and wonderful sensation. You have arrived in Nassau, the unofficial capital of the Pirate Republic. You quickly realize that this is not a clean, orderly colonial town. There are no cobblestone streets, no imposing government buildings, and no civil guards. It is a chaotic, sprawling settlement of ramshackle wooden taverns, makeshift canvas tents, and hastily built huts, all crowded along the shoreline. The air is thick, almost heavy, with the pungent smells of roasting meat, cheap rum, pungent tobacco smoke, and the unwashed sweat of hundreds of men and women. There are no police here, no Royal Navy patrols, and no governor to enforce the law. This is a place of absolute freedom and absolute chaos. Your share of the plunder, which felt like a massive fortune on the ship, now feels like a fire burning a hole in your pocket. You and your crewmates head for the place that is the true heart and soul of any pirate haven, the tavern. Inside, the noise is truly deafening. The room is packed with pirates from a dozen different ships, all drinking, shouting, and laughing. You push your way to a rough-hewn wooden bar and trade a silver coin for a bottle of raw, powerful spirits. Not the watered-down grog from the ship, but the real thing. It burns on the way down, but it is the taste of success. You see that a pirate's money is spent as quickly and fiercely as it is earned. In the corner of the tavern, a group of men are gambling, throwing dice against a barrelhead. Men who are brothers at sea, who would die for one another in a broadside battle, are now intense rivals in a game of chance. You watch a man lose a month's worth of hard-won pay on a single roll of the dice, only to laugh, buy another drink, and challenge someone to a new game. Chapter 15. A pirate's pastimes. With the haven fading behind you, the days at sea can stretch into an endless, monotonous cycle. You learn that fighting off the immense, soul-crushing boredom of the open ocean is as important to survival as maintaining the ship. This is where the true culture of your brotherhood reveals itself. The most important pastime is music. You are lucky, as your crew includes a talented fiddler. He is a man valued almost as much as the ship's carpenter. He is often exempt from the most grueling labor, yet he receives a full share of the plunder, all for his skill with the bow. In the quiet evening hours, after the day's main meal, he sits on a coil of rope on the deck, and the sweet, mournful sound of his fiddle drifts across the water, a lonely but beautiful sound in the vast, empty expanse of the sea. You learn that there are two distinct kinds of songs at sea. The first are sea shanties. These are not for entertainment. They are essential work tools. When a heavy sail needs to be hoisted or the massive iron anchor needs to be raised by turning the capstan, a large wooden winch on the deck, a lead sailor, the shanty man, sings out a line. The rest of the crew, including you, roars back the chorus in perfect unison, pulling or pushing with all your might on the final word. The powerful, rhythmic beat of the shanty coordinates the labor of dozens of men into a single, unified force, making the work lighter and faster. The second type of song is the forecastle ballad. The forecastle, or foxley, is the forward part of the upper deck where the crew gathers during off-watch hours. Here, a man with a good voice sings long, narrative ballads. These songs tell stories of famous naval battles, daring pirates, lost loves back home, or humorous and tragic events at sea. They are the oral history of your new world, passed from ship to ship, providing a shared sense of culture and pride. Another way to pass the time is with games of chance. When you have no money, you find other things to wager. You might bet your next share of the plunder, your ration of rum for the week, or even the shirt off your back. You see men gathered in small groups playing card games with greasy, well-worn decks, or throwing dice carved from leftover beef bones. This is a common source of tension, and the ship's articles have strict rules about it. Cheating is a serious offense, and the quartermaster is often called upon to settle disputes that get out of hand. But perhaps the most important pastime is storytelling. In a world where most men cannot read or write, the spoken word is the primary form of entertainment. During the quiet hours of the night watch, you and your crewmates share stories. They might be boasts, exaggerations of your own adventures, or ghost stories, tales of the Flying Dutchman and phantom ships said to haunt the lanes. They might simply be news and gossip, pieces of information picked up in the last port about which governors are offering pardons, which pirate hunters are patrolling the coast, and which merchant ships are carrying valuable cargo. In these sessions, the legends of your time are born. These pastimes, the songs, the games, and the stories, are the threads that bind your crew together. They transform a group of rough, disparate individuals into a functioning community. Chapter 16, Myth-Busting the Legends. As you live the real life of a pirate, you begin to notice that the wild stories you've heard, the legends that even other sailors tell, don't quite match your daily reality. The truth is often simpler, more practical, and in some ways, far more interesting than the myths. Let's look at 3 of the most famous legends. First, there is the myth of buried treasure. The image of pirates burying a massive chest filled with gold on a deserted island, then creating a secret map where X marks the spot, is perhaps the most powerful pirate legend of all. But in reality, this almost never happened. You must remember the pirate philosophy. Live for today, for tomorrow you may hang. The money you earned was meant to be spent immediately and wildly on shore leave, not saved for a retirement you would never see. Furthermore, the plunder belonged to the entire crew. A captain who tried to secretly bury the company's treasure for himself would have been immediately deposed, or, more likely, killed. It was a violation of the most sacred part of the pirate code. Why bury gold in the ground when you could turn it into rum and good times right now? The legend comes almost entirely from one single, exceptional case: Captain William Kidd. Kidd was a privateer, a legal pirate hired by the government, who turned to piracy. Knowing he was being hunted, he did bury some wealth before trying to negotiate a pardon. He was captured anyway, and the tale of his treasure inspired Robert Louis Stevenson's classic novel, Treasure Island. It is this book, more than any historical reality, that created the myth we know today. The second great myth is walking the plank. The image is iconic: a captive, hands tied, forced to walk off a narrow board into shark-infested waters. This, too, is almost entirely fiction. There are virtually no reliable accounts of this happening during the Golden Age of Piracy. It was an invention of 19th-century writers and cemented in popular culture by J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan. Pirates were brutal when they needed to be, but they were also practical. If they wanted to dispose of an enemy, they had much faster, more efficient methods. A simple sword thrust or a pistol shot was quick and certain. Forcing someone to walk a plank was a theatrical invention, not a common practice. Finally, there is the image of the pirate captain with a colorful parrot on his shoulder. Like buried treasure, this legend comes almost entirely from Treasure Island and its unforgettable character, Long John Silver, who had a parrot named Captain Flint. While it is possible that a few sailors traveling through the tropics might have acquired exotic pets, it was by no means a standard accessory. A noisy, squawking bird would be a terrible companion during a stealthy approach or a chaotic battle. The parrot on the shoulder is a romantic, charming image, but it is not a historical uniform. You now see the truth more clearly. The reality of your life is not one of treasure maps and talking birds. It is a life governed by democratic articles, a surprising system of compensation for the wounded, and a very practical approach to a bloody business. But you also know, with a growing sense of unease, that this unique world you have joined cannot last forever. The great empires of Europe will not tolerate these floating republics of outlaws indefinitely. As you sail the seas, you begin to hear whispers in port towns, rumors of a change in the winds. Governors are offering fewer pardons and more bounties, and new, powerful warships are being sent from England with a single, dedicated mission to end your way of life. Chapter 17: The Pirate Hunters, the Noose Titans. The whispers in the dim, smoke-filled taverns of port towns have finally crystallized into a terrifying reality. The winds of the world have shifted, and they are blowing against you. For decades, the great empires, England, Spain, and France, were far too occupied with bleeding each other dry in continental wars to police the vast, untamed expanse of the Caribbean. This neglect was the oxygen that allowed the Golden Age of Piracy to breathe and flourish. But now, with treaties signed and their massive, battle-hardened navies sitting idle, they have turned their cold, calculating gaze toward you. You are no longer a side problem. You are the new, primary target. The authorities began their campaign with a two-pronged strategy: the carrot and the stick. The carrot was the king's pardon. An official, royal proclamation, dripping with legal finality, was issued from London, offering total amnesty to any pirate who knelt before a colonial governor, surrendered his weapons, and swore an oath of allegiance before a specific deadline. It was the promise of a clean slate, a chance to wash the salt and blood from your hands and return to the humdrum of civil society without the haunting silhouette of the gallows waiting at the crossroads. This offer tore the very fabric of the brotherhood apart. It created a deep, festering rift. For the older, battle-weary pirates, men whose bones ached from years of damp holds and scurvy, the pardon was a lifeline, a final exit strategy. Legends like Benjamin Hornigold, once a mentor to Blackbeard himself, saw the writing on the wall and chose to trade their cutlasses for a quiet, law-abiding existence. But for the younger, more radical spirits, the pardon was a lie, a trick of the state to divide and conquer. They saw surrender as the ultimate betrayal of the absolute freedom they had fought, bled, and died for. Then came the stick. When the promise of amnesty wasn't enough to break the pirate spirit, the empires unleashed their full, crushing military might. They did not send merchant vessels anymore. They sent specialized warships, Royal Navy frigates. Medium-sized, terrifyingly fast, and bristling with heavy iron cannons, began to patrol the shipping lanes like apex predators. These were not the slow, cumbersome targets you were used to chasing. These were designed for one purpose: to hunt, catch, and destroy. They were captained by naval officers who cared nothing for your articles and manned by disciplined Marines trained specifically for deck-to-deck slaughter. Determined governors, men like Woodes Rogers, were dispatched with a single, uncompromising mandate: the total eradication of the pirate scourge. Rogers sailed directly into the heart of the pirate republic, Nassau, with a squadron of warships at his back. He didn't just bring the pardon. He brought the threat of overwhelming, crushing force. Even more insidious was the use of former pirates to hunt their own. Men like Hornigold, who knew every secret cove, every hidden reef, and every psychological weakness of their former brothers, were hired to lead these hunting expeditions. The Brotherhood was no longer just divided, it was devouring itself. You felt the world shrinking. The freedom you had fought for, that vast, beautiful, lawless horizon, was slipping through your fingers like fine, dry sand. The final act of the Golden Age had begun, and as you looked at the black flag snapping in the wind, the only question that mattered was no longer, where is the next prize, but how will I face the end? Chapter 18. An End to a Roving, The Fates of a Pirate. The Golden Age of Piracy, for all its thunder and fire, was a fleeting spark in the long, dark timeline of history. For every man who signed the articles, there was always that cold, unspoken question that haunted the night watch. How does the story end? There was no single answer, no uniform destiny. The end of a pirate's career was a complex, brutal, and varied tapestry of possibilities. For many, the end was as sudden and chaotic as the life they had led. To die in the heat of battle was the baseline expectation. In a desperate, blood-slicked fight against a naval frigate or a heavily armed East Indiaman, a pirate's life could be extinguished in a single heartbeat. You could be struck down by a lead musket ball, cut in two by a boarding axe, or simply obliterated by a storm of deadly wooden splinters when a 12-pound cannonball smashed through the main deck. The infamous Blackbeard met his end in exactly this way. The execution was a grim, theatrical event, designed to sear the horror of the law into the minds of every sailor watching from the docks. To drive the point home, the bodies of the most notorious captains were left to sway in the wind in iron cages, gibbets, at the very mouth of the harbor, serving as a gruesome, decomposing warning to all who dared to dream of piracy. But there was also the fate of the marooned, the ultimate sentence of solitude. For crimes that broke the code of the crew, a pirate might be abandoned on a desolate, God-forsaken rock in the middle of the ocean. He was given a single flask of water, a blade, and perhaps one shot and a pistol, a cruel, thin mercy. As his brothers rode away, the silence that followed was louder than any cannon blast. It was a sentence of slow, agonizing exile, where your only companion was the sun and the rising tide. Then there were the thousands who simply chose to disappear. These were the men who took the pardon, swore an oath they might not have meant, and melted back into the ordinary world. They returned to the farms, the docks, and the city streets, becoming nameless faces once again. For them, the pirate life wasn't a permanent identity. It was just one wild, rebellious, and dangerous chapter in an otherwise mundane story. And those dreams of retiring with a fortune, those were the fairy tales. You spent what you earned as fast as you took it, because living for tomorrow was a luxury no pirate could afford. Retirement was a ghost. The only thing waiting for you was the sea, the law, or the rope. Chapter 19. The Legacy, the Immortal Myth. When the last historical pirate had hung, been cut down, or faded back into common life, the reality began to erode, replaced by something much more powerful and enduring, the myth. The transformation from a brutal, short-lived historical reality into an immortal legend didn't take centuries. It began almost immediately. In 1724, while the last pirates were still being hunted, a book appeared in London. A general history of the robberies and murders of the most notorious pirates. Published under the name Captain Charles Johnson, this book was a literary sensation. It was a brilliant, sensationalized mix of hard history and high drama. Johnson took the dry facts of trial transcripts and sailor interviews and breathed life into them, transforming desperate, miserable outlaws into larger-than-life, charismatic characters. He gave them personality, voice, and soul, cementing their names in the collective imagination of the world. Then, in the late 19th century, the Scottish writer Robert Louis Stevenson took the torch and ran with it. In his masterpiece, Treasure Island, 1883, he distilled all the scattered rumors and tall tales into a cohesive, intoxicating adventure. Stevenson invented the X marks the spot map, a trope that never existed in the real world, and, with his genius, created Long John Silver. Silver became the archetype, the mold from which all future pirates would be cast. He gave us the charming, witty, one-legged rogue with a parrot on his shoulder, introducing the moral ambiguity that makes us love the villain. The final transformation happened in the 20th century, when Hollywood put the legend on the big screen. Actors like Errol Flynn transformed the scum of the sea into swashbuckling acrobats, handsome heroes who fought for honor, swung on ropes, and always walked away with the heart of the lady. This path eventually led to the modern-day icons like Captain Jack Sparrow, who represent the ultimate fantasy of the pirate, a life of absolute, unbridled, and witty freedom. The reality was vastly different. It was a life of rotting teeth, brutal violence, dysentery, and short, miserable ends. But the legend? The legend is immortal. It is the story of the rebel, the outsider, the man who dared to look at the borders of the map and say, "I will go where I please." We tell ourselves these stories not because they are true, but because we need them. We need to believe that somewhere, hidden behind the horizon, there is a place where we can throw off the chains of society, follow our own rules, and live a life that is, if only for a moment, entirely our own. Thank you for walking through this journey with me. From the salt-crusted decks of the real world to the gold-leafed pages of the legend, our voyage is now complete. The sea is calm, the anchor is dropped, and the stories will remain here, waiting in the deep.